YouTube crew, what is going on, and welcome back to another video. And if you're new here, welcome to the channel. I do videos every day just trying to help people get better at Warzone. So if you find today's video helpful, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Now today I'm going to be doing a more extensive tip video on how to get more kills and get more wins in Vanguard Resurgence, so that ultimately you can start to dominate. As always, comment hashtag Caldera down in the comments below, and let's get into it. So the format for today's video is I'm going to be giving you a few different tips that you can immediately apply into your gameplay while rolling a high kill win that I had the other day in the background. Now, I've been absolutely loving Vanguard Resurgence and dropping some insane games. Here are the stats just from yesterday's stream that I had. As you can see, we've been playing really well lately. Now, tip number one, and kind of where I want to start with this, is our early game. Where should you land? Now, the unique part of Vanguard Resurgence that I personally love is that we get a new map pretty much every game. You know, it rotates, we'll see some duplicates, but we're playing in a different area of Caldera every single game, which I personally love. Where should you land? You know, I always say in Rebirth, land in the same spot every single game and get to know that area. It's a little bit tougher to do that here. So lately, I have been actually preferring to land outside the circle and rotate in. You know, the center circle is where a lot of people love to land, and it just gets to be pure chaos. So I prefer to land outside of the circle and ultimately rotate in. Now, the most important thing to know is that no matter where you land, you need to be ready for it to be hot. A lot of times what I've noticed is even on the outside of the circle, because there's no consistency in landing spots. You know, the same team doesn't land bio every game. The same team doesn't land living quarters every game. They're kind of not knowing where to land either. So every situation, everywhere that you land, you need to prepare for it to be hot. You need to prepare to fight. Try to find a gun that you are comfortable with, which kind of leads me to point number two. You know, we don't have loadouts for early game. We don't get any loadout until that free loadout, and buy stations are very scarce. So even if we get the free loadout, buying another one is going to be very tough. So we need to get comfortable with the floor loot. The floor loot is tough this season. It is very difficult to find guns that are really good. There's a lot of shotguns on the ground that are tough to use. There's a lot of guns with, you know, the mega scopes that are hard to use. So really work to find what's comfortable, what you can hit your shots with, and then start to play more aggressive. At that point, you can start to push teams and figure out where everybody else is and push into circle. Now, another kind of tip that I have for early game is to play as a squad. Play as a squad until you can kind of win your area of the map. And this is where I start to get into different tips for my advanced players who are used to pushing on their own or duo splitting, whatever it may be. Win your early game, fight the teams that are around you, win that section of the map, and then start to push different teams based on the intel that you have, which we'll get into in a second. But play as a squad, win your early game, and then start to separate from there. And one more thing again for my advanced players, you can definitely farm teams early game and just kind of leave that person to respawn back in, give yourself more opportunities to get more kills. Or if you really need to, if you're in a tough spot where you don't really have a lot of plates, you don't really have great guns, just wipe the team, get the team out of the game, then start to push. There's a lot of teams actually in this game mode. I think I've seen as high as like 14 or 15 teams and more players. So we do have plenty of opportunities. If we need to wipe a team early, go ahead and take that opportunity and just get them out and then move on from there. Now let's talk about intel. Intel is one of the toughest parts of Vanguard Resurgence in my opinion, and even, you know, the bigger map, but specifically Vanguard Resurgence, intel is very difficult because we cannot buy UAVs. UAVs are $6,000. That's not the issue here. There's plenty of cash. The issue is a lack of buy stations. There are a lot of different areas of the map where there are very few buy stations, and even if there are 2 or 3, there's no guarantee that you can actually get to them to then pop UAV, going back because there's so many teams spread out across the map and what it may be. So UAVs are very tough to come by. If we can get them up, you know, use it to your advantage. But what I do like about it is the lack of suppressed weapons. That gives away a lot of information in terms of where people are fighting and where people are shooting. You're not always going to know exactly how many players are on that team or anything like that. So you do have to be careful and cautious and be aware that even if you see one dot, that may not mean it's only one person. But you can at least use that to your advantage to figure out where players actually are and figure out where you need to rotate to, instead of just kind of wandering out in the open, not sure where to rotate. So use that to your advantage. Use the fact that there are not suppressed weapons to figure out where your next move is and where you need to rotate to. And when it comes to my strategy for this, my whole goal is to go ahead and get one kill. All I need is one kill to then determine where the rest of that person's team is. And then it's just kind of a domino effect from there, especially as we talk about, again, my advanced players bringing you back in. farming kills, right? You get a kill, now you know there's 3 left, you know exactly where they are, you get another kill, one person flying back in, and it creates this domino effect where you can start to get 8, 9, 10 kills from one single team and start to drop higher kill games. So all I'm looking for is one person on radar, one unsuppressed weapon, which starts that domino effect of being able to get more kills and kind of get in the action. The other part of unsuppressed weapons means they're actually shooting at somebody, so you know there's at least 2 teams over there, and you can start to put yourself in the action there. So really focus on pushing teams, you know, paying attention to your minimap and paying attention to your audio cues. While the footsteps, a lot of people are saying, including myself, the footsteps aren't great, but if you really pay attention, the sound of people shooting is very loud. So while it may not actually be close, you get a direction of where the fighting is going on. So those are kind of the 2 intel pieces that you need to be aware of. Look for unsuppressed weapons on your minimap and listen for where shots are being fired and start to push over that direction and start to create that domino effect of getting a kill, then pushing the rest of that team, and so on and so forth. So we've talked about early game, we've talked about intel, now let's talk about execution, and there's kind of 2 components of execution that I want to talk about. The first is going to be your game strategy. Rebirth is a very fast-paced game, constantly moving, constantly repositioning. You can constantly finesse out of situations if you need to, but in the Caldera map, because of how open it is, that is much tougher to actually do. So your game strategy is going to be much more important. You are going to have to keep in mind how you're rotating and where you're rotating to and exactly how you're going to get to that point, which leads me into the second component of execution, which is your positioning. You constantly need to be aware of your cover. Where can you go if you need to heal up, replate, or reload? These guns, when maxed out, are very easy to use. They have very little recoil, and it doesn't take a lot to actually go down. So you need to be aware of where your cover is in case you need to get behind there and plate up. Then you can use that to your advantage. Once you're full health, then you can re-engage and figure out your next point of attack. But you need to be using your game strategy, keeping in mind how to rotate, always keeping in mind your cover, especially for my advanced players. Do not get caught just running out in the open because you think you're going to be able to slide cancel out of that situation. You're going to find a lot of times, especially in, you know, things like fields or out in the open, that there's nowhere to slide cancel to. You have nowhere to go, and you're just going to basically hope that you can get away, and you're not going to be able to. So really pay attention to your cover, focus on your game strategy and kind of your positioning and how you're rotating. So the last thing that I want to talk about is end games, because end games in Vanguard Resurgence get absolutely crazy. You know, in Rebirth, the final 2 circles, we may see 3, maybe 4 teams left, but in Vanguard Resurgence, I've seen 6, 7, 8, even 9 teams left, 15 to 20 players, which leads to absolute chaos. And the circles actually close a lot smaller, a lot slower. So it creates just this small circle of a lot of players trying to rotate in. So the biggest tip that I can give you is to start to play as a squad again if you have separated. Focus on your angles. As I always tell you, and I've told you in previous videos, you want to be close enough to your teammate to help, but far enough away that you're not going to be an easy double kill. So you want to have a good crossfire. Definitely be using your communication. And going back to my last point, always pay attention to where your cover is. When you are rotating into circle, wheels need to be spinning about where is your cover that you can get to. Where is that spot in circle that you are going to have cover from enemies who are trying to challenge you? So I hope you found today's video helpful. Let's go drop some high kill games. As I always say, let's get better today, and I will see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Down one.
Yep.
Life thing. There.
Let's go!